During the Second World War, 95 women were awarded the title the Hero of the Soviet Union. More than half of them received the title posthumously, including 2 Kazakh girls, Aliya Moldagulova and Manshuk Mametova. March 1942. It's very difficult for me to write, but I have no choice. After all, I can't tell Mom that I am tired. I am tired to constantly work, but I have to help. I believe that my dad will be back soon, and everything will be as it was before.
Говорит Москва. Последний час.
But the radio that I hate broadcasts only bad things, and my mom sits and listens to it anyway. It's so good that she did not go to war too. From the first days of the war, 2 friends, Almaty residents Fatima Hisamudinova and Raufa Misaitova, joined the army. On August the 16th, 1941, Valentina Panfilov started her frontline career in the medical battalion of the 316th Infantry Division. In the end of the summer of 1942, Manshuk Mametova went to the front line as a volunteer of the 100th Kazakh Separate Rifle Brigade that was founded in Almaty. Hiuaz Dospanova carried out combat missions since the spring of 1942. In the beginning of February 1942, being the only woman from Kazakhstan, Khalida Mamanova started her service in a penal battalion. In 1943, Aliya Moldagulova started to serve. At the time of joining the Red Army, the eldest of them was 24 years old.
Есть такая цифра, что с Казахстана призывалось 5250.
5,250 is the number of women and girls who were called up from Kazakhstan during the war. But last year, Zhumabai Dospanov, a historian from Atarau, prepared and published an encyclopedia. It is called Female Frontline Soldiers from Kazakhstan. According to the information, 7,411 girls and women were called up from the territory of Kazakhstan, and he collected data about each of them. For the first time, conscription of women became an issue in early July 1941, only after a crowd of women surrounded all military commissariats of the country and required to be included into the list of military volunteers. She immediately wrote to her father, "Either I'm going to the division with you, or I'll leave as a volunteer anyway." And in the evening, when mother came home from work, Valia was ready with her bags to leave for Almaty. From the first days of its foundation, Valentina Panfilov was the member of the 316th Rifle Division. By that time, she finished 9th-class education and courses of medical vigilantes. As soon as the medical battalion was deployed in the school building in the suburbs of the Volokholamsk city on October 14, 1941, the wounded immediately began to arrive. Valentina Panfilova did not like to remember those terrible days, but award papers told everything for her.
Мы наградной лист нашли, например, первый. Разбомбили избу.
We found the award paper saying the hut where the wounded was shot. And my mom, she carried out 3 wounded and saved surgical instruments. Now it sounds ridiculous. Everything is disposable, but at that time every instrument was counted. Kazakh girls and women took an active part in the most fierce hostilities. They were on the front line, as physicians, pilots and snipers. They served in air defense units. They were signal women, scouts, drivers, topographers, reporters and artillery officers. They served in the infantry and even drove tanks.
Например, из Советского Союза в годы войны более 50 женщин всего служили в бронетанковых войсках.
For example, during the war, more than 50 women from the Soviet Union served in tank units. Everyone had different responsibilities, but the crew was completely female. We could find only one. These were 4 girls in the tank crew from Karaganda region. Jamal Baytasova, Kulkan Tobeganova, Kuljamila Talkanbayeva and Jamila Besinbayeva. These are the names of young Kazakh girls who will be remembered forever in the history of our republic. The female tank crew destroyed 5 enemy firing points just in one battle. Junior Sergeant Jamal Baytasova was awarded with the Medal for Courage. The latest information about the crew dates back to August the 22nd, 1944. Only one thing was known later, that the girls died in the territory of Lithuania. Today, the search activities are continuing. April the 23rd, 1942. A loud cry woke me up. I was very scared for my mother, jumped up sharply and realized that it was not her. That cry was behind the wall. I ran out, went into the room next door. I have never seen our neighbor having such a face. My mom was nearby, hugging and reassuring. I saw the letter and realized it was a death notification letter again. The same was recently brought to the house of our teacher, Januzak Akhmetoli. So now, Uncle Kairat will not return with my dad, and they were friends. What is this war for? I do not want these letters to be brought to us. Death notification letters came to the almost every 5th house where women and children stayed, and every mother, sister, wife, after the sad news, got up and went to work. The main burden of supporting the army fell on the shoulders of women in the home front. And this was a personal feat of everyone who plowed in the fields, stood at the machine tool, worked in the factory, knitted mittens, looked after the wounded. The victory was brought closer not only at the front line, but also in the home front.
Товарищ Шарипова совсем недавно пришла работать на завод. Но ее выработка достигает уже...
Comrade Sharipova recently joined the factory, but her productivity has already reached 162%. The war requires from us even greater exertion of strength, excellent work and relentless progress. We helped ewes to deliver their babies and hugged the newborn lambs like this. We kept records of the number of newborn lambs and sent all this information to inspectors. Then we went to hayfield. We mowed grass with a sickle. At those times, we had no cars and equipment. Then the ears were separated from the stem by blowing the husk. And already peeled millet was packed in bags and handed over to the government. Those were the days. I went to get a job in production. I got assignment to a foundry facility. It was a huge and cold workshop. There was no heating. The only warm place was near the furnace, which was heated with sort of coal called coks. We smelted it in that furnace. Asma Zhetpizbaeva and Balzhebek Rusalieva, according to their capabilities and age, brought victory closer by working in the home front, as did young Manshuk Mametova on the battlefields. The girl went to the front being a student. At first, she was a clerk and a nurse in the 1st Rifle Division, but she really wanted to participate in the battles. Later, after she learned using a machine gun, she was assigned to the combat unit. In the fall of 1943, there were fierce battles for the city of Nedon. Covering her fellow soldiers, Manshuk was shooting from the machine gun until her last breath. Thus, Manshuk Mametova was awarded the title of the Hero of the Soviet Union posthumously.
Когда наступило 90-летие Маншук Маметовой, я тогда отправила...
When Manshuk Mametova's 90th birthday anniversary was celebrated, I sent a delegation to the city of Nevel. When our students came to one of the schools, small children raised their hands, willing to tell about Manshuk. They know her, and they are proud of her. And there is one thing that surprised the delegation members. They arrived without warning, but the place of her death was covered with bouquets of flowers.
Букетами цветов.
The descendants will remember the names of women who were heroes of the war. The feat of each was to go to the front line and to be not afraid to fight along with men, or to work selflessly in the home front instead of men. The Ukrainian factory called Bolshevichka was relocated to Semey. My sister got a job there in the sewing workshop. So there were padded jackets and there was no money to buy a coat. Everything was torn and boots were also torn and everything was expensive. There wasn't enough money to buy. My sister caught a cold and in January 1943 she died. I became alone. May 1942. Now I remember how my mother used to make me eat porridge in the morning before and there was a lot of bread on the table. I even see it in my dreams. I never thought that I would like bread so much. We have run out of all supplies and now we have only a ration pack. I run to exchange cards for some bread and I am constantly afraid of losing them. Anyway, my mother and I do our best, but Aunt Gulia has many children. It's difficult for them, so my mother tries to help her. Sometimes we divide the soup into parts and give them a half. I have the best mom in the world, after all. After two friends, Raufa Misaitova and Fatima Kisamudinova, returned from war with honor, they became the best mothers to their children. In 1940, they completed the intensive course in the Medical Institute. In 1941, they were conscripted to the ranks of the Red Army. They had to fight in different sections of the front. When the war began, Fatima was conscripted into the army. At first, she was busy only with conscription, and since February 1942, she became a surgeon of the medical battalion as a part of Evacuation Hospital 1431 near Stalingrad.
В начало Великой Отечественной войны ее как врача призвали.
At the beginning of World War II, she was conscripted to the front as a doctor. At first, she was the doctor of the sanitary evacuation train, where she transported the wounded to the central part of the Soviet Union. Soldiers who were cured were taken back to the front, and the wounded were taken here.
Поскольку Сталинградская битва это была очень тяжелая мясорубка.
Heavy battles took place near Stalingrad, and Fatima had a hard time. She took her mother's pillow with her to the front as a talisman, and during the bombing she covered herself with it as a protection from bullets. She was safe. There was the case when one young and nice-looking soldier was brought with almost cut-off hand. During 4 hours, Fatima was restoring his hand, and she could fully restore the motor function, and the soldier owed it to her.
Был случай, говорит, один боец, или в то же время, он был ранен, и мать его оперировала, и прооперировала хорошо.
One fighter who was operated by my mother after the war became a famous aircraft designer at the Antonov plant. And after the war, he found my mother. He came here with presents. He thanked, kissed her hands, and thanked her very much for saving his life.
Еще тогда, когда музей находился вот в деревянном здании, где сейчас музыкальный музей.
Previously, this museum was located in the same building where the Museum of Musical Instruments is now. And my mom was there. She said that once a short, dark-skinned Kazakh came. And when he saw her, he sat aside crying. My mom came up to him, asked what happened, and gave him water. He didn't say a word, looked at her, turned around and left.
А уже на третий день он приходит с мешком, в мешке баран.
Next day, everything repeated. And on the third day, he brought a bag with lamb. Kumes, Kurt, and then said,
Моя фамилия
"My surname is Janjigitov. I'm a scout. When I was dying, you gave me your blood.
твой брат кровь. И я тебя долго искал.
I am your blood brother, and I was looking for you for a long time. You didn't let me die.
Я тебя нашел. Кусок в
After I found you, I cannot eat. Do not let me starve to death, and let me thank you."
И вы знаете,
And you know, they stayed friends until his very last day, and my mother accompanied him on his last journey. Behind one life of a rescued soldier is a whole generation of his descendants. In 1941, 1945, doctors, paramedics, nurses and orderlies put about 17 million soldiers and officers of the Red Army on their feet. 72.3% of the wounded and 19.6% of the sick returned to duty. Most doctors were women. Among them, there was another Kazakh woman, Khalida Mamanova. After graduating from Almaty Medical Institute, the girl tried to join the army as a doctor or nurse, but she was rejected because of her origin.
Род Мамановых в ЖТСУ был известен благодаря тому,
The Mamanov family in Jatisu was known because Maman and his sons built schools for the children from poor families. And these schools had excellent conditions and accommodation, where the cult of knowledge reigned.
культ знаний.
After the revolution, 15 people from the Mamanov family were shot. 36 families were exiled. Yesenkul, Khalida's father, was convicted under the famous Article 58. That is why Khalida Mamanova, being a certified doctor, at the beginning of 1941 was forced to dig trenches. But the girl did not give up.
И она тогда написала письмо Сталину. Она не ставила ему ультиматум. Она написала письмо, что
So she wrote a letter to Stalin.
врага народа.
She did not give him an ultimatum. She wrote a letter about herself as the daughter of the enemy of the people, whose father was convicted under Article 58. She asked to send her to the penal battalion, and if she would survive, they would justify her relatives. There was no long wait for the answer, and she was sent to the penal battalion. Khalida came to serve near Stalingrad. At first, she served in this battalion. Then she became the head of the hospital. And when she came to Berlin, she was the captain of the medical service.
Капитана медицинской службы до Берлина.
Today, a letter came from my dad. It lies on the chest. My mother and I agreed that we will always read letters together. And in the morning, she went to work, and I had to wait till the night. I literally hear how the clock is ticking slowly and the time goes on. I have to sit at home all day because of a bad cold and to look at the letter. To be honest, I really want to read it, but I promised. The letter lies in front of my eyes. I removed it. I wish Dad wrote that he was going home. I wonder how he looks now. Aliya Moldagulova also sent a letter from the front to her family. She wrote the letter on the piece of newspaper and finished it with a poem of great abai. This life is interesting because of love. If you die, you have to die at least with a good name. And if good deeds and words remain after you, then after death, you can be equal to a live person. The poem was written in one of the last letters of the hero of the Soviet Union, sniper Aliya Moldagulova. 18-year-old Aliya died on January the 14th, 1944.
Свой героический подвиг она совершила 14 января 1944 года.
She accomplished her heroic feat on January the 14th, 1944, protecting Kazachka village from German invaders. The commander was mortally wounded in this battle. The soldiers dug in the snow and were afraid to move on the attack. They lay and everyone had fear. Half of the soldiers began to retreat, and when Aliya saw this, that the soldiers were retreating, she stood up to her full height, and with the words, "Let's do this for our motherland," she led all the soldiers to the suburbs of Kazachka village. This battle was the last one for Aliya Moldagulova. She died fighting with a German officer. Fellow officers buried the heroine. The place of burial is considered to be the village of Manakova of Novosokolniki district. Another sniper from Kazakhstan did not return home. Bayan Baigozhina will forever remain a 22-year-old beauty.
Ее посылали на самые трудные участки. Вот бывает, что сидит какой-то фашист и мешает буквально жить, да? Не пройдешь, не проедешь, всех подстрелят.
She was sent to the most dangerous areas. Let's imagine there was some annoying fascist sitting, not letting people pass and shooting everyone. But she found and removed that German sniper. Bayan Baigozhina was called to the front from Abay district of Semey region. She died somewhere in Prussia, just few days before the victory.
Дней 10, там, неделю, вот так вот.
When my mother finally arrived, we sat down to read the letter. My dad wrote that they beat the fascists, but it's very difficult. Almost everyone who went to the war with him died. That's why the death notification letter about our neighbor came. He said that in order to not forget, he wrote down who was buried and where. Like this. After the battle, I saw Kairat. He laid with his eyes open. I thought he was alive. I crawled, but he was dead. We buried him under the mountain next to the tree. We stood silently and could not even speak. For the first time, I cried. But Makpal, do you remember what kind of a person he was? Always cheerful and groovy. Only yesterday he dreamed how he would return home and build a house. We remembered that when we were kids we stole apples from the gardens. Makpal, I do not remember the taste of our apples. And Kairat won't eat anymore. For the first time in history, during the years of World War II, female combat units appeared. On October the 13th, 1941, Hiuaz Dospanova met Marina Roskova, who at that time was engaged in the formation of female aviation regiments. The girl was enlisted into the group of navigators. After completing an intensive training course, she was enrolled as a navigator gunner in the 588th Night Bomber Regiment. Hiuaz Dospanova is the only female navigator bombardier of the combat aircraft during the war years. She showed courage and heroism, bombing the Nazis from the air. She made 300 combat sorties. The enemies called our female pilots night witches. When flying up to the enemy at night, they turned off the aircraft engines and suddenly started to shoot. Twice, the brave Hiuaz was seriously injured, but still returned to duty and met victory near Berlin. The history has never known such a massive participation of women on the battlefields and an example of selfless labor in the home front, as during the years of World War II. Women of Kazakhstan have made an invaluable contribution. How the country experienced that period. Who were those people who gave us a peaceful sky? Look for answers in the project Our Common Victory. To make everyone know, remember and honor. I love your lines, your thin profile. You sacrificed your life to righteous struggle. As we today, descendants will revere the ever-living feet of yours and memory of you. Forgetting the severe trials not, for that time left so many scars. Your faith and bravery, true daughter of the steppe, makes your entire people proud. Imagining you walking, through the country peaceful nowadays, amidst a crowd of aging friends. Still young and timeless, our hero girl, Manshuk.